Welcome to the Afghanistan Project Podcast. I'm your host, Beth Bailey, and today my guest is Geeta Bakshi, former CIA counterterrorism officer and founder of Famil. And Geeta, we're doing the Case That Broke My Heart series here, where volunteers and advocates come on and get 5 minutes to talk about the case that gutted them. Um,
Yeah.
and I have not heard your case. I am really excited to hear what you have to bring to this discussion. I just think it's so important for people to hear how difficult this work has been over 4 years. So please,
Yeah.
without further ado, the floor is yours.
5 minutes. Okay, here we go. Um, I'm going to tell you the story that broke my heart, but I hope that I can give you a silver lining at the end of it. Um, Last year, so this would have been 2024, Famil was at one of the Afghan support centers in Texas, and I was working on my computer dealing with one of the clients from the zero units, and Nasir from my team came in and interrupted me, and he said, "I need you to stop. There's an urgent issue." And I understood what he was saying. Within some of the community that we work with, mainly combat veterans, from the zero units, we've had incidences of suicide, and so I understood when he said, "This is urgent. Stop what you're doing." He had a soldier with him from the zero units, um, and we had him sit in front of me, and I looked at this man, and he was, I could tell he was probably in his early 30s, um, and his eyes were red, and he just had tears streaming down his face, and there was no sound, there was no crying out loud or anything like that, but he was definitely in a difficult place, and so what I did is I said, "Hey, why don't we step outside?" Because at that point, Beth, we're in this big ballroom. There's hundreds of people around, and I wanted to be able to give him some space to talk privately and share what was going on. So I grabbed one of my teammates to help me with interpretation, and then we stepped out of the ballroom and went outside, and we found a very quiet corner in that hotel, and we I wanted to have a very down to earth conversation with this guy, and so we literally sat on the ground, and I said, "Tell me what's going on." And he was choked up and crying. And so I gave him time. I said, "Take your time whenever you're ready." I said, "I have all the time in the world." And so he started talking and he told me a story. And he said, "Look, I was 18 years old when I joined the zero units. I worked with the units for 12 years. I think I was a good soldier. I was brave. I wasn't afraid of flying bullets. I followed my advisors' instructions, whatever they told me to do. I went on missions night after night. I faced some of the most difficult missions against enemies. And I couldn't go home for 6 months at a time because the threat to my family was so big that if I went home to my village, it would put my family at risk." And he said, "I did this for 12 years. And in the end, the Americans got me out and they got my family out. And I'm so grateful for that. But I'm countryless because the one thing that I was promised was that I would have a home here. And I'm waiting for my SIV, and it's been 3 years. At this point, it was 3.5-ish years. And he said, "I don't know what to do. I've completely lost hope. I don't have an answer. I've made so many inquiries to the various parts of the government about my case status." And he was from Oklahoma. And he said, "I drove to Texas here today to meet with representatives from State Department and ask them about my SIV status. And they told me they don't have a case by my name in the system." And he said, Can you just tell me what I've done wrong? What did I do wrong? Why am I being punished? I mean, did I do something wrong? Have I upset someone?" And he was genuine. He was very, very simple conversation. He said, "Please tell me if I've done something wrong." And he said, I don't want to live anymore. I can't face my family. I have no dignity. I just don't want to live anymore. And I've struggled. What he was struggling with and what he shared with us that day is that he was having thoughts of taking his life. And it was very serious. And having dealt with this in the previous years a few times, and having had some experience myself of working with combat veterans, American combat veterans from both Iraq and Afghanistan, and dealing with, with incidences of suicide, I knew this was very serious. I knew what I was dealing with here. And it was just heartbreaking because some of these men are so tough, they're resilient, they're warriors, they're not afraid of life and death. Their biggest battle was not on the battlefield in Afghanistan, but it's here, not being able to get an answer, a simple answer to what is my case status? And the answer he got that day was, there's no case for you. We literally have nothing in the State Department system by your name. And he said, I can't live anymore like this. I'm completely hopeless. And I just want to end my life. And I've given up. And I shared this with Nasir, and he sat me down in front of you. And I don't know what you could possibly tell me that's any different. And I said, hey, brother. I called him brother for a reason because, I do look at these guys as our brothers in combat and mission and service. And so I said, look, I said, tell me about your family. And he said, look, I have a wife and I have, so many children and they're all living in Oklahoma. And I said, okay. And I said, look, for whatever reason, it was our destiny to meet here today. It was your destiny to walk in here and to get that case update and to talk to Nasir. And now you're sitting in front of me and we're going to fix this. And I said, I can promise you that we will not leave you, feeling abandoned, which is how he felt. He felt alone and abandoned. We will not leave you alone and abandoned. And we're going to fix this. And it was so heartbreaking seeing this man that had sacrificed so much for our country and for his own, and to protect innocent lives from terrorists that wanted to do harm. And to see him sitting here hopeless and be talking about taking his life. Had he not walked in that day, Beth, and had we not intervened on his behalf, we'd probably be talking to his widow and his children at this point, because that's the direction it was headed in. It was completely heartbreaking for me to see this. I went home that night just completely heartbroken, but I will tell you there was a silver lining here, and that was that we intervened. We spoke with the right folks in the government. We got an answer. He actually had comm approval for 2.5 years. But because there was an administrative error in how his name had been spelled, he never received his comm approval. And all this time, he was asking for case status and had been told nothing exists, we can't find it, your case is in process, all these mixed answers. But what it took was somebody caring and seeing that the person is broken and they're on the verge of suicide, and I cannot let them walk out like this. We were able to get his comm approval. We were able to help him apply for his green card. He's in the process now. He's hopeful. I gave him my direct phone number, which normally my team handles this, but no, I gave him my direct phone number, and he and I are still in touch with each other. And his family is doing good, and he is hopeful, and he is off that ledge. But I share this story because it was heartbreaking. It was even more heartbreaking for the cases that unfortunately didn't come to us in time, and that we did lose them to suicide. And this is still a battle that we're dealing with within our community. But God bless them for being resilient, and my team for fighting day and night to help these folks stay hopeful.
I'm glad you shared that. It's not a lot of people want to talk about those incidents, not just it's in the Afghan population who moved here. It's in the volunteer population that has cared for them. It is in the veteran population that is caring for them and or feels the moral injury of watching the country that they also fought for return to the enemy that they fought against. This needs to be discussed more, and I'm so grateful that you were there. And thanks for sharing that.
Thank you, Beth.
Everybody, thanks for listening, and Tashkor, and hope to see you again soon.